Hello, are you ready to learn for today?
Let's have our lesson for today, which is special right triangles. So, familiar tayo pag sinabing right triangles, pero ano kaya yung dahilan kung bakit tinawag silang special ngayong araw? Ano kaya yung mga characteristics na meron dito sa right triangles na to kung bakit sila naging special? How to identify the shortest and the longest side of a given triangle given its angles. If you want to identify the shortest side, dapat alam mo kung nasan dyan yung smallest angle kasi opposite yung dalawang yon. So between 60 degrees, 70 degrees, and 50 degrees, we have here 50 degrees as our smallest angle. And the one opposite it is gonna be our shortest side. Kasi opposite ng smallest angle natin is the shortest side. So the answer is gonna be line segment AB for the shortest side. But for the shorter side, yung sumunod sa kanya is gonna be the one opposite 60 degrees. Kasi yung sumunod na mas maliit, or hindi siya mas maliit, sumunod na maliit na angle. So that's gonna be 60 degrees. Opposite it is gonna be side BC. And the longest side is the one opposite your largest angle. At ang largest angle natin on this given example is gonna be 70 degrees. So in this case, opposite niya is gonna be line segment or side AC. Therefore, that is our longest side. Let's have this example number 2. So good. So it's gonna be line segment DE because this one is 40 degrees eh. And yung right angle natin, 90 degrees yan. So ang pinakamali talaga si 40 degrees. Opposite niya si DE or line segment DE. So that's gonna be the shortest side. Ano yung sumunod sa kanya?
Line segment EF po.
Line segment EF. That's the one opposite your 50 degrees. And the longest side for this given right triangle is?
Line segment EF.
Very good. So it's also the hypotenuse because the given triangle here is a right triangle. It's the one opposite your right angle, the longest side of this given right triangle, DF or line segment DF. Let's proceed with number 3. On this given right triangle, sana namang right triangle? What's gonna be the shortest side?
Line segment GI po.
Line segment GI. Tignan natin. Yan. Ito kasi yung nagpapagulo sa atin. Kulang kasi yung angle na binigay, di ba? So 60 degrees to, yes, we can identify this one as 90 degrees. So malamang malaki yan mamaya. So yung isa kasi 30 degrees. Ano yung clue dyan? Na ang sum ng dalawang acute angle ng right triangle is 90 degrees. So you can just subtract 60 degrees from 90, you will get 30 degrees. And that's the measurement of the other acute angle. So that means that's going to be the smallest angle. Opposite it is our shortest sides. Next, anong sumunod kay line segment GI? Yung shorter.
Line segment HI po.
Line segment HI. Very good. It's opposite 60 degrees. And diba? Siya yung sumunod eh. And the longest side of this given right triangle?
Line segment GH po.
Very good. So it's also the hypotenuse because our given triangle on number 3 is gonna be a right triangle. Ayan. So it is also important for us to understand how to identify the shortest up to the longest side of a given triangle given the angles. Because later on, as we understand one of the special right triangle, magagamit natin tong strategy na to or yung idea na to. Let's already start with the first special right triangle that we'll be discussing for today. And it's gonna be the isosceles right triangle. And this is also called the 45-45-90 triangle. I think you're already familiar with this. Na-introduce ko na siya before, the isosceles right triangle. Ito yung triangle na congruent yung dalawang legs niya. And right triangle siya at the same time. But for me to derive the properties or the special characteristic of this right triangle, let me first introduce it using a square. Kasi I think nabanggit ko na rin sa inyo to nung nag-discuss tayo about the quadrilaterals, specifically when we discuss square. So let's have the measurements of the sides of the square being equal to x, all of the sides, since square yan. And let's consider a diagonal of the square. If we have that diagonal, we can name that diagonal as C. And because of that, that diagonal also creates two isosceles right triangle on the square. So that means this is an isosceles right triangle na kung iiwalay natin siya, ayan yung itsura niya. So the sides measures x and the hypotenuse measures c. Considering that both of the legs measures x, what if we want to compute for the value of c? If we go back to the Pythagorean theorem, we have a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, or c squared is equal to both the sum of a squared and b squared. Now, if we compute for that, considering both of the legs will be x and the hypotenuse, we can label it as c. So that's going to be c squared is equal to x squared plus x squared. That means c squared is equal to 2x squared. If we get the square root of both sides, c will just be equal to x square root of 2. And this only gives us the idea of the relationship between the sides of an isosceles right triangle. So it says here that the length of the hypotenuse is equal to the length of either of the legs times square root of 2. So ano ba ibig sabihin nun? Instead of us performing Pythagorean theorem, you can use the relationship between the sides of an isosceles right triangle to actually identify the part. So for example, in this given right triangle or isosceles right triangle, if the given measure for the legs will be x, ang hypotenuse natin will be x square root of 2. Magmumultiply ka lang ng square root of 2. Hindi ka na gagamit ng Pythagorean theorem. So, ayan, no? Kaya siya naging x square root of 2. Nagmultiply lang tayo ng square root of 2. Now, in that given idea, ayan. So, unang property, if this is x, this is also x. Congruent yung dalawang sides. Kaya nga siya tinawag na isosceles. Ayan. For example, ang sukat ng isang ay 7. Ayan, if the measurement of one leg is 7, the other leg will also be measuring equal to 7. 'Di ba? So, yung isang leg natin is also equal to 7. So, another idea why is it special compared to other right triangles is that it says here that the length of the hypotenuse is equal to the length of the leg times square root of 2. Usually, when we are dealing with right triangles and we are to identify the measurement of its sides or its missing side, ang ginagawa natin madalas ay gumagamit tayo ng Pythagorean theorem. Dito hindi mo na kailangan kasi meron special properties yung mga sides ng triangle na to, especially the isosceles right triangle. So in this case, all you need to do, 'di ba? Sabi yan, yung length daw ng hypotenuse, equivalent lang ito sa length ng leg times square root of 2. So measurement of the legs will be x, and therefore you just multiply square root of 2 from it, you'll get x square root of 2. So kung ang sukat ng, for example, ang sukat ng isang leg ay 7, ibig sabihin ang hypotenuse natin ay 7 square root of 2. Nagmultiply ka lang ng square root of 2. And how do we apply these following properties? Let's have the following example. Find the missing side on each given. So let's have number 1. So we have here, how do we identify if this given triangle is an isosceles right triangle? Ayan, no? Yung dalawang sukat ng legs natin is gonna be congruent. So it's gonna be an isosceles right triangle. At the same time, kahit hindi natin sulat, this is gonna be a 45, 45, 90 degree angle as well. So first, if the measurement of one of the legs is 5, wherein A is equal to 5, what do you think is the measurement of B? So, since this one is an isosceles right triangle, kung ang sukat ng isang leg mo ay 5, the other leg also will measure equivalent to 5. Ayan. So, very good. The correct answer, B is equal to 5. Next, how do we now identify the measurement of the hypotenuse? Katulad nga nung binanggit as a property of this given special right triangle, if you want to identify the measurement of the hypotenuse, you just multiply the measurement of the leg to square root of 2. So, if one of the measurement of the leg is 5, ano ngayon yung sukat nitong hypotenuse natin, which is represented by variable c? So, ang magiging sukat ng ating hypotenuse will be 5 square root of 2. Ayan, no? 5. Then, multiply ka lang ng square root of 2. Kaya siya naging 5 square root of 2. O, sige, let's have another example. Let's proceed with number 2. So, in this given, First, you have to identify isosceles right triangle ba to o 45, 45, 90 ba siya? Tignan natin. So one of the acute angle is 45. So we can already say that this is an isosceles right triangle because the sum of the interior angles, I mean the sum of the acute angle is gonna be 90. So kung 45 to 45 din yung isang angle. So it's gonna be a 45, 45, 90 triangle. That means we can apply the given property. But on this given, binigyan naman tayo ng value ng ating hypotenuse and it is gonna be equal to 3 square root of 2. Ayun, paano naman natin i-identify yung sukat nung legs when the given is the hypotenuse? So, all you need to do is to divide square root of 2 from the given hypotenuse. So, if the given hypotenuse is 3 square root of 2, yan, divide lang natin. So, 3 square root of 2, divide tayo ng square root of 2 dyan. Masisimplify natin yung square root of 2 over square root of 2 at ang matitira ay 3. Therefore, that is the value of one of your legs. 3. At dahil nga isosceles right triangle ito, ayun din yung sukat ng isa pa nating leg. Anyway, let's proceed with number 3. We have here another 45, 45, 90 triangle or as an isosceles right triangle. So 45 to, so 45 din yung isa. Ayan, next, if A is equal to square root of 2, anong value ng B? O, pares lang naman legs yan, di ba? Legs to si A, ganun din si B. Legs sila parehas. So if A is equal to square root of 2, B is also equal to square root of 2. Now, how about if we want to get the value of C? So, gagawin natin dyan, kuha tayo ng value ng isang leg. Pares lang naman yan square root of 2. And sabi nga dito, if you want to get the measurement of the hypotenuse coming from the leg, you just need to multiply it by square root of 2. So, times square root of 2. So, if we multiply them, we'll get square root of 2 times square root of 2. Product rule ng radical expression, we can just write it in a single radical sign. So it's gonna be 2 times 2. Pares naman ng index, square root sila parehas. So it's gonna be equal to square root of 4. And square root of 4 is just equal to 2. Therefore, A is equal, or sorry, not A. C pala itong pinag-uusapan natin, sorry. C. Yan. So C or our hypotenuse is equal to 2. Okay, let's proceed with the rest of the other example for this given right triangle. Yan. So, find the missing side. Still, number 4, an example of isosceles right triangle. Congruent yung dalawang legs natin. Therefore, if A measures equivalent to square root of 8, anong value ng B? So, very good. It's also gonna be equal to square root of 8. But just in case, kunyari, nalagay ito sa test, wala sa choices yung square root of A. Ang dahilan, kasi hindi pa siya nakasimplify. So, you can still simplify square root of 8 into a factor of 4 times, or square root of 4 times 2. So, 4 is a perfect square, so we can get the square root of that, equivalent niyan sa 2. So, the simplified form of square root of 8 is gonna be 2 square root of 2. Just in case lang, na wala sa choices. Kunyari, nasa test, di ba? So, simplify mo. Baka kailangan pa i-simplify. Anyway, how do we identify the value of C? So, katulad ng binanggit ko kanina, kuhain mo yung sukat ng isa sa mga legs. Pares naman yan, square root of 8. And then multiply it or multiply square root of 2 from it. So we'll be having square root of 8 times 2, which is equal to square root of 16. And the square root of 16 is equal to 4. Therefore, our hypotenuse or C is equal to 4. Okay, next, let's have number 5. This one is still a 45, 45, 90 triangle, an isosceles right triangle. But on this case, hypotenuse natin 10 Madali lang to kung yung hypotenuse mo 10 square root of 2. 10 to, tas 10 din yung isa pang leg. Tanggalin mo na square root of 2 pag dinivide mo, di ba? 10 lalabas. Problema, hindi 10 siya 10 lang. Walang kasamang square root of 2. So, ang gagawin natin dito is magiging strict lang tayo dun sa rule. Sabi kasi, if you want to get the measurement of the leg coming from the hypotenuse, you just need to divide square root of 2 from the given hypotenuse. So, ang given natin na hypotenuse, for example, solve natin yung isa sa mga legs. Pares naman yan So, A is equal to, yung given natin hypotenuse, 10, and then divided by square root of 2. So, we have 10 over square root of 2. In this case, supposedly, yan yung tamang sagot natin. Kaso lang, in the rules of radical expressions, this is not yet considered as simplified because there's still a radical expression on the denominator. So, based on our lesson before, kapag ganyan, we multiply it with square root of 2 over square root of 2. In other words, we rationalize it. Saan nanggaling yung square root of 2 over square root of 2? Ayun kasi yung nasa denominator. Yan. So, if we multiply it with square root of 2 over square root of 2, yan. So, taas times taas, 10 times square root of 2. This is equal to 10 square root of 2 over, ayan. Square root of 2 times square root of 2, that's gonna be equal to square root of 4 or just equal to 2. So, this is gonna be equal to 10 square root of 2 over 2, but we can still divide 10 and 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Therefore, ito matitira dito ay 1 na lang. So, therefore, the value of one of the legs is gonna be equal to 5 square root of 2. Ayan, that means A is equal to 5 square root of 2. At dahil nga congruent lang sila ni B at nung isa pang leg, ibig sabihin si B ay equal kay 5 square root of 2 din. Okay. So that is our first special right triangle. And the next one will be yan, a triangle that is what we call a 30-60-90 triangle. Wala siyang special name, hindi katulad nung special ng isosceles right triangle na 45-45-90. Yan. So, dito, sa triangle na to, obviously, kaya siya tinawag na 30-60-90 triangle because the angles inside this right triangle is gonna be 30, 60, and 90 degrees. But how do we derive the examples or the properties or the relationship between the sides of this given right triangle? So, as an illustration, let me consider a right, sorry, not a right triangle, but rather an equilateral triangle. A triangle which all of the sides are gonna be equal. At the same time, this equilateral triangle is also called an equiangular triangle dahil nga lahat ng angles niya ay congruent. Kasi equilateral siya, equiangular din siya. And iisa lang naman yung measurement ng angles kapag congruent lahat sa isang triangle. So that is only when your angles are equal to 60 degrees. Ayan yung tatlong importante na pwede mong isipin na property ng isang equilateral triangle. Lahat ng sides ay congruent, lahat ng angles congruent at equivalent ito ng 60 degrees bawat isa. Anyway, so paano ko i-relate dito yung 30, 60, 90 triangle? So let's try to have the measurements of the sides of this equilateral triangle as 2x. So, 2x yan lahat kasi nga equilateral siya. And then, let's try to divide this triangle in half by having this altitude or height, which is actually perpendicular with our base. Yan. So, pagka dinivide natin yan, we can name that one as A. And that also divides one of the angles na 60 degrees into 2. So, magiging 30-30 yan. And if we consider the measurement of each base of the triangle's form, that's gonna be x and x dahil nga galing siya sa 2x, di ba? Nahati sa dalawa, so x and x. Now, in this case, we can consider one of the triangles that is formed and that is considered as a right triangle, di ba? So, if we may consider the values of the sides and also the angles of this right triangle, ang sukat nito ay 2x dahil nga siya 2x dyan. Ito, wala tayong sukat dyan. Lagay natin A. And then ito, x na lang kasi kalahati nga siya nung base. And if we consider the measurements of the sides, I mean the angles inside this right triangle, it's gonna be 30. Galing siya dito. Ito naman, 60. So it's gonna be a 30, 60, 90 triangle. But as you notice, if you want to solve for the value of A, we can use the Pythagorean theorem. Considering C is our hypotenuse and that's gonna be 2x and one of the legs measures x. Hindi siya congruent kasi obviously iba yung sukat nitong A natin. So pwede natin siyang isolve using Pythagorean theorem. It can also be in the form of c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared wherein c is gonna be 2x so we'll be having here 2x quantity squared is equal to a squared plus x squared dahil nga ang b natin ay x. So if we simplify 2x quantity squared, so we have 4x squared is equal to a squared plus x squared. Lipat natin yung x squared sa kabila. Magiging 4x squared minus x squared. It's gonna be 3x squared is equal to a squared. If we get the square root of both sides, we can simplify the square root of 3x squared into x square root of 3. And that's gonna be the value of a, x square root of 3. So what do we mean by that? That only explains the two relationships between the sides of a 30, 60, 90 triangle. That is also the reason why this triangle is what we call as a special right triangle. That is because in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, we can consider the one opposite your 30 degrees as the shorter side. Ito, shorter side natin, yung opposite sa kanya, or shorter leg because it's a leg. And opposite 60 degrees as the longer leg. And obviously, ito yung ating hypotenuse dahil yan yung longest side ng ating right triangle. And if we compare the relationship between each of them, opposite your 60 degrees is gonna be x. And we can already identify the measurement of the hypotenuse out of that shorter leg because the hypotenuse is twice the length of the shorter leg. Kung mapapansin nyo sa ginawa nating derivation kanina, we'll get the measurement of the hypotenuse as 2x. And how do we get the measurement of the longer leg, which is the one opposite your 60 degrees? Yan. So we can just multiply that measurement of the shorter leg to square root of 3 because the length of the longer leg is gonna be square root of 3 times the shorter leg. Yan. So, kung nalilito kayo sa relationship, mas madali yang maintindihan when it comes to a given example. So, for example, ang sukat ng x natin ay 12. Or mean, ang sukat ng shorter leg mo ay 12. Times 2 mo lang, makukuha mo yung sukat ng hypotenuse. That's gonna be equal to 24. 12 times 2. So, how about the longer leg? Yan, sabi dito, the length of the longer leg is square root of 3 times the shorter leg. So, in this case, times mo lang daw ng square root of 3 yung shorter leg kung gusto mong kuhain yung sukat ng longer leg. Kaya nga dito, if the shorter leg is x, you can get that longer leg. You just need to multiply square root of 3 from that one and we'll get x square root of 3. So, for example, kung ang sukat ng shorter leg mo ay 12, your longer leg will be equal to 12 square root of 3. Now, para mas maintindihan natin kung paano natin ina-apply yung mga relationship na to pagdating sa sides nitong 30, 60, 90 triangle, let's have this given example. Let's identify or find the value of x and y on the following. Let's have number 1. Yan. So, una, tignan mo muna, 30, 60, 90 triangle ba to? Yes, because the angles inside this given right triangle is 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and also 90 degrees. Now, second step for this one is for us to identify which among the sides is gonna be your shorter leg, longer leg, and the hypotenuse. So, madali dyan unang hanapin yung shorter leg. It is the one opposite your 30 degrees. So, ayun yun, yung 3. And we can also identify the hypotenuse easily by locating the right angle and the side opposite the right angle. That's gonna be your hypotenuse. And the remaining side, which is the one opposite your 60 degrees, is your longer leg. Yan, once na ma-identify mo na yan, balik tayo sa relationship na discuss natin kanina. Shorter leg is the hypotenuse is twice your shorter leg. So, kung ang sukat ng shorter leg mo ay 3, ang sukat ng hypotenuse or yung x natin dito. Ito. Times 2 lang, di ba? So, what we can do is to multiply that 3 to 2 and we'll get the hypotenuse. Multiply nyo lang sa 2. And that's gonna be equal to 6. Now, how about the longer leg? Ang sabi dito, longer leg is square root of 3 times the shorter leg. So, balik ka sa shorter leg. Then, i-multiply mo naman ito sa square root of 3 para naman makuha mo yung sukat ng longer leg. So, kung ang value ng shorter leg mo ay 3, multiply mo lang to sa square root of 3, ang longer leg mo is 3 square root of 3. O, sige, let's have another example para mas maintindihan pa natin. Let's have this one, number 2. So, one of the angles of this right angle is 30 degrees. So, that means the other angle, we can safely assume that it is equal to 60 degrees. Kasi ang sum nitong dalawa dapat 90. Di ba? Sum of the acute angles of a right triangle is 90 degrees. So, it's safe that this given right triangle is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. That means yung relationship na meron tayo dito sa kaliwa ay applicable. But let's have identified the parts present. Opposite ng 30 degrees, shorter leg. Opposite ng right angle, hypotenuse. And opposite nung 60 degrees natin is gonna be your longer leg. Oh. So kung ang hypotenuse natin ay 18, punta tayo sa shorter leg. Paano natin makukuha yung shorter leg? O kabaligtaran lang, if nagmumultiply tayo ng 2, galing shorter leg papuntang hypotenuse, baligtarin natin. Divide naman tayo ng 2. Galing hypotenuse papuntang shorter leg. So if the hypotenuse is 18, we divide 2 from that, we'll get x is equal to 9 or your shorter leg is equal to 9. How about the longer leg? So, multiply naman natin to sa 9 sa square root of 3. Therefore, yan, shorter leg yung i-multiply. So, magiging 9 square root of 3. Yan. Let's have this last example for this slide. So, this we have 60 degrees to. So, 30 degrees na yung isa. Sum nila dapat 90. Yan. So, that means opposite niyang 30 is gonna be your shorter leg. Opposite ng right angle is hypotenuse. And opposite ng 60 degrees is the longer leg. Yan, longer leg pala yan si 7 square root of 3. So, madali lang sa atin. Anong sukat ng shorter leg? Galing ng longer leg, papunta ng shorter leg, mag-divide ka lang ng square root of 3. So, from 7 square root of 3, you just divide square root of 3 from that. So, we can just simplify at ang matitira na dyan for the value of x is 7. So, yun na yung shorter leg natin. May shorter leg ka na, hindi na magiging mahirap yung hypotenuse kasi times 2 mo lang. Ayun na yung sukat ng hypotenuse. So, from the shorter leg, which is equal to 7 times 2. Therefore, the value of y is equal to 14. So, let me just finish discussing the answers for the following. So, we have here example number 1, a right triangle ABC, wherein having D as our altitude. It's perpendicular to your hypotenuse. Given that BD is equal to 4 square root of 2, let's identify the measurement of the following segment. AD is equal to, teka lang, this one is an example of a 45, 45, 90 triangle, no? Kasi isosceles to eh, ayan, no? Congruent yung dalawang legs natin. So we can safely assume that angle A is 45, angle C is also 45 degrees. So how do we get the measurement of AD? Parang nakakalito. Teka lang, pwede siguro natin gawin dyan since nagkaroon ng right triangle nung nagkaroon ng altitude na yan. So, kuhain natin yung right triangle na nabuo sa taas. It is similar to this entire or to this original right triangle or an isosceles right triangle. That means if we try to separate it, rotate, this given right triangle will form a right triangle BDA, which is also an isosceles right triangle. That means, angle A is 45 degrees, di ba? So, automatically, angle B on this part is also 45 degrees. And based on the given, BD, is equal to 4 square root of 2. O, di magkakaroon ka na ngayon ng idea o class. Ano sa tingin nyo sukat ng line segment AD or DA? Ito. O, isosceles right triangle yan. So if the measurement of line segment BD is equal to 4 square root of 2, it's also 4 square root of 2. Jane, very good. Isosceles right triangle eh. And what do you think will now be the measurement of AB? Yan, by the way, lagay natin dito, AD is equal to 4 square root of 2. That's correct. How about the measurement of line segment AB? Ito, medyo magsasolve tayo. Kasi if you want to get the measurement of the hypotenuse coming from the legs, we just need to multiply the measurement of the leg to square root of 2. Ganyan yung ginagawa natin, di ba? So, that's gonna be 4 square root of 2 times square root of 2 or equal to 4 square root of 2 times 2. Equal yun sa 4 times square root of 4 or 4 times 2 kasi ang square root ng 4 ay 2. So, that's gonna be equivalent to 8. That means line segment AB is gonna be equal to 8. O, lagay na natin dyan, AB is equal to 8. O, hindi na kayo ngayon mahihirapan. Pag tinanong ko kayo, class, anong sukat ng line segment BC? Yes, it's also gonna be equal to 8. Kasi 'di ba isosceles right triangle? 8 sila parehas. Ito DC, para mas madali natin maintindihan kung paano kuhain yan. Kuhain naman natin yung nasa baba na right triangle. I-rotate din natin in such a way na pare silang itsura. At as you can see, this is also an isosceles right triangle. Ayan. So, the angle C and angle B will be both equal to 45 degrees. And based on what we have got, based on the given, 4 square root of 2 yung sukat ng BD or DB. At yung nakuha natin kanina si BC, 8. Ano nga yung sukat ng CD or DC? O, di ba? Madaling makita. It's equivalent to 4 square root of 2. Parehas lang sila. Isosceles right triangle. So, DC is equal to 4 square root of 2. Kaya nga kung tatanungin ko kayo, class, what do you think is the measurement of line segment AC? Or I think this is the hypotenuse of triangle ABC. Eto, ano daw sukat nitong line segment AC or side AC? Magpapakahirap pa ba tayo? Pagdugtungin lang natin to. Both of them will be having 4 square root of 2. If we add those two, 4 square root of 2 plus 4 square root of 2, that's gonna be equal to 8 square root of 2. So AC is equal to 8 square root of 2. Now let's proceed with the second and last example for our lesson today. Yan, meron tayo ditong given still triangle ABC with an altitude having a segment of BD. So if this one is 30 degrees, we can already say that this angle A is gonna be equal to 60 degrees. But first, the given here, AC, ang hypotenuse daw natin ay 12. So we can safely assume that the other angle is 60 dahil nga ang sum nila ng isa pang acute angle ay 90. Kaya 60 degrees yan sa angle A. Now, since this one is a 30, 60, 90 triangle and 12 here is considered our hypotenuse, that means this one is, lagay ko na lang shorter, no? Wag na natin kumpletuhin na shorter leg. Shorter, and this one is the longer one. Ayan, so anong sukat ng shorter side or shorter leg? Hypotenuse mo, 12. Shorter leg mo, divide mo lang sa 2, di ba? So, divide mo sa 2 yung 12, 6 yung AB. Or line segment AB is gonna be, or BA is gonna be equal to 6. Tama dyan. O, how do we get the longer leg naman? O, coming from the shorter leg, you multiply square root of 3 from that. So our longer leg is gonna be 6 square root of 3 or the measurement of line segment BC is 6 square root of 3. O ano naman daw sukat ng AD? And for us to answer that, we can get this right triangle that is formed through that altitude, rotate and flip in such a way that it looks the same as this given right triangle. Just for me to prove to you that these two triangles are similar. And dahil similar sila, yung angles inside them are also congruent. Yan. So 60 din sa angle A, then 30 degrees naman sa angle B. In this case, based on what we have got from letter A, the line segment AB measures 6 and yung isa pa nating, ito, dahil nga ito, shorter leg, ito longer leg, L na lang ito to hypotenuse, kalahati ng 6'3". Kaya yung line segment AD natin is gonna be equal to 3. 'Di ba? 6 divided by 2 kaya siya 3. And then yung longer leg natin which is DB or BD, and by the way, lagay muna natin siya 3. So AD is equal to 3. Yung BD naman or DB is equal to 3 square root of 3 kasi longer leg natin yan eh. So lagay na natin, yan, BD or line segment BD is equal to 3 square root of 3. Yan. So ang kulang na lang natin, ito si DC. Pero hindi na tayo mahirapan dyan eh. Hypotenuse mo, 12. Yung isang segment mo, 3. Anong sukat ng isang segment which is DC? 12 minus 3 na lang, di ba? So 9. Okay na yan. But if you want to still use the right triangle na natira dun sa isa, pwede naman, makukuha mo pa rin naman 9 dyan kapag sinolve mo siya. So angles are congruent, given 3 square root of 3, and the hypotenuse is times 2 nun, so kaya siya 6 square root of 3. But if you want to solve for the value of DC, you can just multiply our shorter leg to get the longer leg, multiply mo siya by square root of 3. Kaya siya magiging ganito. And eventually, you will also get 9 as the value of DC. And kung hindi ka na-satisfy na nag-minus ka lang, pwede mo naman pahirapan yung sarili mo at ihiwalay yung right triangle na yon.
I hope you understand the lesson for today. Until next time, bye!